Hi, Masa. Well, we are expecting proceedings to finally kick off. The BBC President and CEO just waiting for President Ramaphosa to arrive. They are about to receive him on the other side of the room. But just to talk us through really the theme that the BBC Summit was unpacking this year and the role of big business, growing black business in the country so that collectively they can grow economic growth is Dr. Stavros Nicolaou. He is, of course, with the BRICS Business Council as well as Group Executive for Stakeholder Trade or Strategic Trade at Aspen Pharmacare. Thank you so much for talking to us. Now, a big conglomerate that you obviously represent, and we are here at the Black Business Council, just the importance of big players such as Aspen working with black business to grow the economy together.
Firstly, good evening to all the viewers and thanks for having me on. I think we all acknowledge that our country is not growing anywhere near the growth levels that are required. We are kind of bottoming out at the moment. There's been revised forecasts around our growth. We've been downwardly revised from about 2% to 1.4%, which doesn't augur well for job creation. It doesn't augur well for poverty alleviation. And one of the most fundamental ways we are going to grow our economy is if we create space and opportunity for small businesses, SMEs. So imagine a picture where we created another 100,000 new SMEs that all employed 8 or 10 people up and downstream. Imagine the impact that would have. Now, to get there does require significant policy reform, but more importantly, policy implementation. But it also requires big and small business working together. I think what I'm very passionate about always at these Black Business Council dinners and the conference is the two most fundamental policy implementation gaps at the moment are firstly in preferential procurement or localization. I think as a country we talk a good game about localization, but at the end of the day all I see is trade deficits growing, more and more imports, and us being extremely unstrategic as a country about how we, for example, aggregate public sector volumes and look to sit down with industrialists, black entrepreneurs who cannot access capital in the main and say, well, how do we use these volumes as off-take agreements to allow the space and opportunity for small businesses to come into play? So that's the first one. The second thing is, I touched on it, it's very difficult for anyone that's a young budding entrepreneur to go and access capital to start a business. And sometimes it's a small amount of even 100,000 Rand that will make a massive difference. So when you go and you try and borrow money, you go to a bank, whether it's a DFI or commercial bank, they say, well, show us the collateral. Where are you going to get the collateral from? But if we are more strategic, as many other countries are around the world, with volumes and off-take agreements, I think we can solve that. And that, just solving that problem, I think will materially change the picture in the SME space for our country and give us a lot more growth than we presently see.
Absolutely, and I think those were the key words over the last 2 days is implementation, strategic implementation with all stakeholders working together. We are looking ahead to the BRICS Business Council and BRICS Summit in Brazil, as well as the G20. Black business opportunities to leverage off those two very important meetings?
So look, both are very important for different reasons. Let me start with the G20. We're the only African G20 country, first of all, and we're advancing very much a South African but also an African agenda. So the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is another lever and instrument that we are not utilizing properly on the continent. So our focus as South Africa, and this only comes around once every 20 years. So we've got another, till November, another 5 months or so. We better make sure we capitalize on driving our particular agenda forward. So we've got to be strategic, tactical and clear that come November, heads of state meeting, that we find the right language that is going to accelerate and stimulate economic growth, investment, trade and commerce on the African continent. So that's the importance of the G20. Now let me shift very quickly to BRICS. Okay, why is BRICS important? I think firstly, as a country, our posture should be and ought to be that we trade with the West, we trade with the East, we trade with the South. We cannot afford to pick and choose partners. We've got to look simply at what represents the best economic value for our country, what represents the best opportunities for our country. That resides in the West, the East, and the South. And certainly BRICS is one of those important partners.
Yeah. Now, in that geopolitical context, before I let you go, the key discussion there is, of course, growing that black businesses and meeting socio-economic transformation in context of a changing global economy. We saw those changes play out even in those 2 days. The two friends out in the USA seemingly having a fallout. So for black businesses that are still growing, when they face such rapid changes in what's happening geopolitically, just a word of advice on how they can navigate those storms to still realize growth.
So look, 2 weeks ago was a very interesting week for South Africa. Why? Because on the Wednesday we were in the White House. On the Thursday we were in the LSEs in Paris meeting President Macron. So our president went to the White House, our deputy president to Paris. And the geopolitics are important. And one can get caught up in the weeds with geopolitics. And I think a country like India, who has very similar challenges to ours, but has evolved significantly in the last 30 years, they've really got it right. I mean, India's a model case. And India doesn't tend to get too caught up in the geopolitics. So I think what I am starting to see with this current South African the 7th administration under President Ramaphosa, I am starting to see a more calibrated foreign policy, one that is a little more anchored in economic policy and the economics, and that's positive. Because if you get it right at that level, it's going to sort of infuse down and filter down to small business as well. So what we cannot afford to be doing is taking openly hostile positions that are unnecessary, that land up affecting our economy. And I must commend Minister Nicolaou, who spoke here yesterday. He has been, there's been a sincere attempt, I think, to better align foreign policy with economic policy and bring the two closer together. That can only benefit us.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I suppose get on with the business of growing the business and not focus so much on what's happening. Thank you so much. Well, Masa, the program is starting now, so I am going to wrap it here. President is going to be talking as well as those sponsors. Masa, it's back to you for now.